I really don't like making content like this, but here we go. This is the pattern. A conservative talking head or politician goes on a podcast or a TV show or speaks at a rally in front of tens of thousands of fans, and they say something that has been historically shown to lead to violence against marginalized communities. And we on the left say, hey, you shouldn't say that because it has been historically shown to lead to violence against marginalized communities. And they say, oh, you little liberal snowflake. You can't handle hearing words. You're too sensitive. Why don't you go and cry in your safe space? I have my First Amendment right, which guarantees me the right to say whatever I want free of consequences, even though that's not how the First Amendment works. And then violence predictably happens, and they do this. They rush to the internet to memory hole all of the hateful rhetoric that they have been spewing into the public discourse. They feign compassion by saying that this is a senseless, unspeakable act of evil that they do not condone, that their hearts go out to these families and these communities, that they're praying for them, and that no one is responsible for this act of senseless, unspeakable evil except for one mentally ill lone wolf. And they defensively say that if anyone even thinks about holding them accountable for the violence, that's just a despicable act of politicizing a tragedy. The very idea of potentially being held accountable for their words is offensive to these people. And look, I'll just say this. If you're a person who regularly finds yourself in a position where you have to be saying, I'm not racist, I'm not misogynistic, I'm not homophobic because of the words that you've said, it doesn't mean that you definitely are all of those things, but it's not a great sign. And in that same vein, if you're the kind of person who every time a predictable, preventable act of violence like this occurs, you feel compelled to run to the internet and say, this isn't my fault, it doesn't mean that it definitely is your fault, but it's not a great sign. I don't feel compelled to go on the internet and make sure everyone knows that a shooting at a gay nightclub is not my fault, because I have a public-facing platform that is centered around regularly advocating for the queer community. But if I were the kind of person who had a public-facing platform that was centered around regularly villainizing, dehumanizing, and degrading that community, I might feel compelled to go on the internet and make sure everyone knows that it's not my fault when that community is violently attacked. Who knows, maybe there's some morsel of decency left in my conscience that makes me aware that this might be a little bit my fault. Or maybe I'm just trying to make sure that no one ever tries to hold me accountable for my words. I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I'm heartbroken. I don't know if we're ever going to get anything that feels like justice in the here and now when it comes to holding these people accountable for their words. And I also don't know if we're ever going to be able to convince them to stop saying the kinds of things that they say. But I do take some solace in the idea that hindsight tends to be 20/20, and that when future generations look back on this point in American history and try to determine who was in the right and who was in the wrong when it came to the ideological divide, it's not going to be particularly close. The eyes of history see these people clearly for who they are and the harm that they cause. And while that might not feel like justice, it might be the closest thing that we get.